Hello and a very good day. My name is Nur Asha Sofia Binti MAZRI, and today me and my teammates are going to present the role-play simulation titled Bridging Borders, Trade and Tariff Agreements. We explore a complex international negotiation involving three major global powers: the United States, China, and France. It is set in a WTO conference setting. The simulation responds to ongoing global trade tensions, focusing on three core issues: tariff reduction, intellectual property rights, and the regulation of rare earth material export. The goal of the negotiation is to develop a fair, transparent, and enforceable trade agreement that balances national interests while promoting multilateral cooperation. The simulation begins with Scene 1, where it is an opening plenary where each delegation presents its national concern and priorities. In Scene 2, it shifts to a working group format where delegates negotiate specific terms of a phased tariff reduction, including enforcement mechanism and compliance benchmark. In Scene 3, the focus moves to intellectual property rights with proposal for a WTO monitored violation registry and a neutral legal panel to address dispute. In Scene 5, signing ceremony, the parties ratified the Geneva Framework for Fair Trade, which includes a 20% phased tariff reduction over 2 years, stronger IP enforcement structures, and oversight on rare earth export. Lastly, Scene 6 is the closing remarks. The role play reflects realistic diplomatic interaction, incorporating cultural sensitivities, legal frameworks, and strategic decision making. It highlights the challenges and possibilities of multilateral negotiation in today's interconnected economic landscape.
Hi everyone, my name is NAJIHA, and today me and Daniel will walk you through the list of characters and their responsibilities of this role play. So let's start with these two: Anais, the chairperson, and Al, the US lead trade negotiator. Anais represents the France as the chairperson. Her job is to stay neutral and make sure the negotiations stay organized, fair, and also goal-focused. She opens and also closes each session, moves the agenda forward, and makes sure every country get a voice without letting things go off track. Basically, she's the one keeping the whole process diplomatic and balanced. On the other hand, Elle represents the United States as its lead trade negotiator. Her tone is formal and assertive, and she's the one who opened the US position. Elle introduced the big ideas like the tariff reduction plan and the push for stronger intellectual property enforcement. Together, Anais and Elle set the tone for the entire negotiation, one as a natural facilitator and the other one as a firm but cooperative lead negotiator.
Thank you, Alia. Hi, I'm SYED IMRAN, and now I will continue to explain the role of Freya and Xiaomei. So, Freya is the US economic delegate who took on a very direct and enforcement focused role throughout the negotiation. By supporting Ambassador L, she proposed concrete mechanisms such as quarterly WTO audits and a transparent intellectual property violation registry to ensure that the trade rule were not agreed upon but actively followed. Freya emphasized that protecting US innovation, especially in sectors like technology and biotech, was non-negotiable, and she pushed for clear consequences for repeated violation. Her approach reflected American law context, rule-based culture that values transparency, efficiency, and measurable compliance. Freya's contribution helped anchor the negotiation in accountability and real-world enforcement. As for Xiaomei, served as a China Deputy Trade Envoy and Policy Analyst, with bringing a cautious, principled, and sovereignty-conscious tone to the negotiation. She defended China's right to domestic enforcement over intellectual property and voiced strong concern about foreign-led audit that could violate the national jurisdiction. Instead, she proposed a fair and mutual framework such as export access benchmark and two-phase tariff reduction, reflecting China's long-term stability focused trade policy. Xiaomei also supported transparency but emphasized the need for privacy safeguard in any WTO oversight. Her character showcased China's high-context diplomacy, where balance, gradual reform, and national dignity are key priorities. Now, I'll move on to the last character for our roleplay, Noel. Noel is the French diplomatic advisor, played a critical role in bridging the gap between two very different negotiation styles, with America's direct approach and China's sovereignty-driven stance. His tone was elegant, neutral, and culturally aware, always aiming to keep the dialogue constructive and balanced. Noel introduced multilateral solutions like the Global Intellectual Property Enforcement Panel and the WTO metric dashboard, which helped establish trust among all parties. Beyond policy, he also defended France's cultural industry by advocating for the protection of non-traditional intellectual property such as wine labels, artisanal goods, and geographical indicators. His role reflected the Europe core values of fairness, stability, and diplomacy through cultural respect. That's all from me and Alia. Thank you.
Good day, Dr. Puspa. So, my name is ANISFATIHah BALQIS binti Ahmad FUAD, and my friend MUHAFIFILYANA binti MUHAMAD will be presenting about the differences in cultural dimensions that we have included in our roleplay. So, let's start with the first dimension, which is power distance. So we'll start off with the USA, where represented by Al and Freya demonstrate a low power distance. They insist on mutual accountability such as quarterly audits and also a transparent dashboards. So for China, which is Jiamei, shows a high power distance, preferring that enforcement stays within a national institution and not foreign ones. Meanwhile, France, through Noel and Anais, holds a moderate to high stance, favoring a structured governance like legal panels under WTO supervision. Now, moving on to the second dimension, individualism versus collectivism. The USA is clearly a highly individualistic, where L. and Freya speaks extensively about protecting the rights of their creatives and startups. China is collectivist, prioritizing national development and rejecting blame-focused narratives. Meanwhile, France strikes a balance highlighting both personal identity, like protecting artisan brands, and a broader Europe collaboration. Next, let's look at masculinity versus femininity. So the US leaning towards masculinity, where they are more competitive and also outcome driven. Terms like enforcement, penalties, and compliances are frequently used by them. Meanwhile, China stance is more balanced, preferring a legal caution, stressing harmony through panels and also appeals. Last but not least, France, on the other hand, leans towards femininity, where Noel advocates dialogues, cultural dignity, and diplomacy over confrontation. Now, I'll pass it to my partner to continue with the final three dimensions that we'll be discussing in the slides.
Thank you, and let's continue with the fourth dimension, which is uncertainty avoidance. France shows very high uncertainty avoidance. Noel and Anais call for legal clarity, fixed decision timelines, and multi-layer oversight. China also exhibit high uncertainty avoidance, especially when Xiaomi reject foreign lead audits that lack jurisdiction. USA is more comfortable with uncertainty, suggesting flexible system like phase-based tariff reduction tied to performance. Now, onto long-term versus short-term orientation. The US favors a short-term approach. L wants quick measurable result with enforcement tied to current action. China, however, is a long-term oriented. Xiaomi proposed gradual tariff reforms and environmental sustainability for rare earth export. France again leans long-term, supporting legal evolution and ongoing multilateral engagement. Finally, indulgence versus restraint. USA expressed indulgence, which is Freya speak passionately about values, fairness, and national integrity. And China is clearly restrained, where Xiaomi maintains a composed, formal tone and avoids emotional or political statement. France, however, show moderate indulgence, when Noel defends French culture expressively but stick to institutional language. They reflect deep-rooted national values, by from how country view hierarchy to how they manage conflict and peace. Thank you for your attention.
Distinguished delegates, bonjour, good morning, and welcome to Geneva. We gather today not merely to talk trade, but to confront some of the most pressing challenges facing the global economic system. The WTO remains a cornerstone of international cooperation, but that foundation has been tested in recent years. Tariffs have surged, trust has eroded, and disputes over intellectual property and critical materials threaten to fragment our global supply chains. Our agenda is ambitious but necessary. We aim to rebalance tariff structures that have proven disruptive and punitive. We seek to establish clearer, more equitable frameworks for intellectual property protection. And finally, we must address the transparency and sustainability, my apologies, of rare earth material exports, resources essential to the technological future we all share. Let us begin with national statements. I now invite the United States delegations to present its priorities. Ambassador L, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Anais. Colleagues. The United States arrived at this negotiation with an unwavering commitment to a rule-based global trade order, one that works for every country, large and small, and one that does not privilege, loophole, or turn a blind eye to violation. In recent years, our nation has experienced significant strain on key industries: agriculture, advanced manufacturing, semiconductor, and clean energy technologies among them. Tariff escalation has created a retaliatory cycle that benefits no one, and our business, particularly small and medium enterprise, have borne the burn. We have also encountered unacceptable breaches of intellectual property protection, patent duplicated without consent, trademark inferred upon trade secret leaked or stolen. These actions don't just violate trade rules, they undercut innovation and economic sovereignty. The US proposed a paced reciprocal tariff reduction of 25% over 18 months. This framework must be tied directly to demonstrable compliance with the global standard for IP enforcement. No paper commitments, but concrete action.
To build on Ambassador Al remarks, America's strength lie in its innovation ecosystem. Our researcher, our designer, our creators, they drive global advancement. But without adequate IP protection, their work becomes a target rather than a triumph. We are calling for the establishment of a WTO monitor IP audit framework. Member states would be subject to periodic compliance reviews conducted through transparent, impartial mechanism. Those found repeatedly violating IP norm would face trade penalties, not as punishment but as a deterrent against continued exploitation. We're not suggesting this out of self-interest alone. Countries around this table know that counterfeit goods, unlicensed replication, and patent theft are a global problem. If we don't act together, we all lose. Fair trade is not theoretical. It must be operationalized through verifiable commitments. Additionally, on the issue of rare earth material, these are the lifeblood of countless industries, from defense to digital infrastructure. We must introduce predictability into this market. A global economy cannot function if foundational resources are strategically withheld or subject to OPEC restriction.
So, thank you, Madam Anais. Let me begin by emphasizing China's full support for multilateralism and our belief that trade can and should be a force for mutual development, not division. That said, it is important to reject certain narratives that disproportionately assign to blame. So China has in recent years been subject to punitive tariffs and restrictive measures that in our view are not only economically damaging but also inconsistent with WTO principle. At the same time, we have taken serious strides to reform our IP enforcement system. Our courts have issued binding rulings in favor of foreign rights holders. We've introduced IP education campaigns and invested in anti-counterfeit enforcement. In light of this, we propose a mutual tariff reduction of 20% over 2 years. This timeline reflects the realities of economic recalibration. A WTO-led tariff committee should be established to oversee implementation and mediate disputes. As for intellectual property, we are open to increased transparency. However, foreign-led audits, particularly those lacking jurisdictionally clarify, pose a sovereignty concern. Enforcement must be the responsibility of domestic institutions operating under internationally agreed standards and not foreign arbiters. Lastly, on the rare earths, these resources are finite and increasingly under strain. China is prepared to publish export quotas twice a year. These quotas would be based on sustainable mining practices and domestic needs. But let's be clear, access must be balanced with responsibility.
Okay, sorry. I do not. Sorry. So, Mercy, Madam Anais, as a representative of the European Union and France, in particular, I bring the voice of partners, often caught in the crossfire of geopolitical disputes. France has no interest in prolonging tension, but we also refuse to be casualties of someone else's trade war. Our farmers producers of some of the finest wines, cheeses, and agricultural goods have faced retaliation not because of anything they did, but because of broader tension between the United States and China. So the same applies to our automobile industry, which is now navigating a ticket of unpredictable tariff. So we advocate for a balanced approach rooted in what we call the Francis framework. This will include gradual and reciprocal tariff reduction, IP informers, enforcement mechanism that reflect both fairness and national jurisdiction, and WTO regulated transparency on essential commodities, particularly rare earth. So I will add, fair trade is not simply bilateral, it is multilateral. So when two major powers clash, third party economies suffer. So that cannot be standard operating procedure moving forward. Europe must remains committed to constructive engagement. So we believe the WTO must not only mediate trade dispute, but help design system that prevent them from arising in the first place.
D'accord, merci, Ambassador Noel. Thank you to all delegations for your clear, candid opening statement. It is evident that while differences remain, so too does the shared commitment to progress. Let us now begin our deep dive discussion with the first core topic, the tariff reduction framework. Delegates will break into working groups this afternoon to begin shaping concrete language for an agreement. Please come prepared with position papers and suggested timeline. Thank you.
So let's not dance around it. From the US side, we're proposing a two-phase tariff reduction mechanism. Phase 1 would see a 15% cut in tariff over the first 12 months. Then, contingent on verified compliance, an additional 10% reduction would be unlocked in phase 2. Now, let me be crystal clear. Verification is non-negotiable. We want quarterly audits conducted under the WTO framework. If any party fails to audit in a row, the second phase is automatically paused. That's our safeguard. We open to dialogue, but we need to keep it tight and enforceable.
So we do acknowledge the clarity of the US proposal and appreciate the structure. A phase reduction is reasonable. However, we must emphasize the principle of mutual reciprocity. Any reduction must be matched on both sides and not staggered or one-sided. China proposed a 10% tariff reduction in the first year, followed by an additional 10% in the second year. However, this second phase should only activate when both sides have achieved at least 70% of their agreed export access benchmarks. It ensures that reductions are earned and not just expected.
That brings us to a key point. Could you elaborate, Xiaomi, on how those export access benchmark would be measured? We need specific, not general commitments.
Certainly. So, for instance, U.S. agricultural export, particularly soybeans, should return to pre-tariff market volumes within China. On the Chinese side, we expect our solar technology exports to regain equal competitiveness in the US market, free from administrative delays or extra inspections. This would be measurable through custom data and trade flows.
If I may, yeah, fonts believe neither side should assess its own compliance. So we recommend the creation of an independent metrics dashboard overseen by WTO affiliated economies. So the dashboard will track benchmark transparently, relying on real-time trade data. So this way, no country is in the position of judging its own case. So neutrality enhance credibility.
That's idea got legs. But here the caveat. The data feeding into this dashboard must be public. We can base decision on prior proprietary or obscure numbers. Everyone need access.
Yes, that is true. We are open to that, provided that appropriate privacy safeguards are in place, especially for commercially sensitive data. Transparency, yes, but not at the expense of confidentiality.
So, to summarize where we stand, we are broadly aligned on a two-phase structure, with reduction tied to measurable compliance. What is left is ironing out how enforcement mechanisms work, especially in the event of non-compliance.
Uh, so fonts propose a simple rule. an automatic suspension clause. So if a party miss its target for 2 consecutive quarters, the next tariff reduction is frozen until the issue is resolved and verified. So this avoid drowns out dispute while still allowing room for recovery.
All right, this is promising. I'll direct the legal and technical team to begin drafting language for this section based on what we have discussed. And I believe we are nearing consensus on tariff. Now let's move forward to our next agenda item, which is intellectual property rights.
So let me begin by stating the obvious. Intellectual property thief is not a peripheral issue. It strikes at the heart of economic progress. In the United States, innovation is our engine. We invest billions annually in R&D, expecting that our inventions, whether in biotech, clean energy, or artificial intelligence, will be protected by international law. Yet, in the absence of effective global enforcement, that confidence is eroding. Businesses, especially startups and SMEs, are hesitating to expand across border. And who can blame them? When IP rights are ignored or selectively enforced, the entire global innovation ecosystem suffers.
This is why we believe we need a systematic, transparent, and enforceable response. The intellectual property violation registry, as proposed by the US, would be a centralized platform maintained under the WTO. It will record and publish verified instance of IP right violation, not rumor, not accusation, but documented and review case. We propose a threshold mechanism. If a country accrues three substantiated violations in a calendar year, that record will automatically trigger a compliance review by the WTO, followed by appropriate diplomatic consultation or, if necessary, sanction. I'm sorry.
So, China fully acknowledges the need for effective intellectual property protections. Our own economic growth has increasingly been driven by innovation, and we understand the economic growth, strategic value of safeguarding those assets. However, we must stress the importance of fair process, sovereignty, and also legal precision. No member should face punitive action based on unilateral accusations or ambiguous metrics. Therefore, we propose that all violation claims first undergo rigorous scrutiny by an independent WTO legal panel composed of a neutral expert in the international law and IP governance. This panel must function under clearly defined procedural rules. First, all parties must be given access to the evidence. Second, responses must be heard in both written and also oral formats. Third, hearing must allow for multilingual interpretations. And the last one, finding must adhere to WTO agreements and establish precedents, particularly the TRIPS agreements. And most importantly, all parties must retain to right appeal the findings of the panel to a higher WTO review mechanism. This ensures that enforcement is not only efficient but legitimate and also depoliticized.
Mercy colleagues, it is most reassuring to witness convergence on this critical matter. France has long advocated for intellectual property to be treated with the same seriousness as any other pillar of international trade. To operationalize what has been discussed, we propose the establishment of the Global Intellectual Property Enforcement Panel, or GIEP under WTO supervision. So the GIEP will consist of 5 eminent legal scholars or former trade educators, each appointed from a different WTO region to ensure diversity in legal philosophy and geopolitical representation. So these members will serve rotating annual terms with conflict of interest declaration in place. The GIEP will be tasked with reviewing complaints within a fixed timeline, for instance, 90 days from date of submission, and will publish a comprehensive legal opinion with every ruling to reinforce judicial transparency. We propose that both majority and minority opinion be made publicly available. This will not only ensure transparency, but also help evolve a body of jurisprudence for future IP related deliberations.
So we welcome this structure, provided it remains neutral, accountable, and also shielded from geopolitical influence. We further suggest that the panel decision not be binding by default, but instead provide recommendations subject to approval by the WTO dispute settlement body or a general council. This preserves multilateral oversight while granting the panel meaningful enforcement leverage.
We can accept that as long as the system doesn't become paralyzed by endless delay or legal ambiguity. The point here is to create real consequences for repeat violator. And to clarify, we propose that the panel be empowered to recommend temporary trade measures, such as the suspensions of tariff preferences or license ban, pending WTO review. Without it, enforcement is performative.
And let's expand our scope. Intellectual property protection shouldn't just be reserved for high-tech firms or pharmaceutical patent. We're talking about food packaging design, luxury brands, digital media, creative arts, and even indigenous craft. All of these sectors contribute to national identity and global economic vitality. The registry and panel must account for all forms of IP, including those that have been historically marginalized.
Okay, France strongly concurs. The unauthorized replication of Francais wine labels, couture, design, culinary trademark, and artisanal craft is an ongoing concern. So, by codifying protection of non-traditional IP domain such as cultural expression, GI tags, and artistic design, we uphold the integrity of cultural industry globally. So this is not merely about commerce, it is about protecting identity, heritage, and dignity.
We would caution that while the scope should indeed be broadened, criteria for infringement must remain objectively defined. Cultural and traditional expression are nouns and often embedded in a local context. There must be safeguard to avoid overreach or misinterpretation of such claims.
There's a fair point and one we can work through in the technical annex. What matters most is that we finally move beyond symbolic support for IP protection and toward real enforcement, real accountability, and a real deterrence.
Thank you, esteemed delegates. Today's exchange has been among the most constructive of the session. We have outlined a robust, multi-layered approach to IP governance, a transparent and WTO managed violation registry, an expert driven, legally sound enforcement panel, GIEP, clear procedural rights, including appeals and dissenting opinions, and lastly, an expanded scope that reflects the full spectrum of global creative and technological industries. With this, we are laying the foundation for a fair, enforceable, and culturally inclusive international IP regime. If there are no final interventions, let us now turn our attention to the concluding technical matter, rare earth export and environmental sustainability. Distinguished delegates, after intense round of negotiations, collaborative dialogue and compromise, we have reached a milestone and today we gather to ratify the Geneva Framework for Fair Trade, a collective vision crafted in the spirit of multilateral trust and shared progress. This historic agreement includes a phased 20% tariff reduction to be implemented over 2 years, and then the establishment of a WTO-led intellectual property violation registry, complete with an impartial legal review mechanism, and lastly, a global commodify registry to monitor and ensure fair practices in the export of rare earth elements. Before we proceed to signatures, let us now hear the closing statements from key parties.
Today marks a defining chapter in our commitment to a rule-based trading system. The United States approached this agreement not just as a diplomatic necessity, but as a strategic and a moral duty. We signed the framework with clear eyes and firm intent to uphold our values, ensure fairness for all players, and enforce a global order grounded in transparency and accountability. We recognize the challenges ahead, but we also see the promise that this framework holds. The US side with resolve, responsibility, and the unwavering belief that trade can uplift every nation.
This agreement does not dilute our principles. Instead, it strengthens them. We did not come here to compromise who we are. We came to build a system where integrity is rewarded and duplicity has no space. Let this document stand as a testament. Cooperation among nations does not mean surrendering our core value. It means reinforcing them through mutual understanding. The United States will not only sign this agreement, we will implement it rigorously, monitor it diligently, and enforce it fairly. Our word is our bond.
So, on behalf of the People's Republic of China, we sign this framework as a gesture of a sincerity and strength. Trade must not be a battleground but a bridge that connects markets, cultures, and people. China acknowledges that fairness must govern the global market, just as peace must govern the international order. We express our appreciation to the front delegations for their pivotal role in mediation. May this framework help to de-escalate tensions and open the door to a greater cooperation between the East and the West.
France and indeed Europe signed this agreement not merely to defend continental interests, though those are important, but to affirm our belief in cooperative diplomacy. So the principle enshrined in the Geneva Framework echo Europe core values, mutual respect, sustainability, and multilateral governance. So we are proud to have played a mediating role, and we believe this agreement will serve as a blueprint for future international accords. Let this moment remind us all: when dialogue prevails, diplomacy triumphs.
Then it is so with the full assent of the participating nations, the Geneva Framework for Fair Trade is hereby ratified. Let this day be remembered not for the documents we sign, but for the doors we open toward cooperation, towards mutual accountability, and toward shared prosperity for generations to come. May this agreement serve as a compass guiding us with clarity and purposes in the certain terrain of global trade. As a chair, as chair, I recommend all delegations for their professionalism and dedication. What we have accomplished here is more than an agreement. It's a step forward, a rule based global order rooted in cooperation and mutual accountability. Well, thank you, delegates, and congratulations.
Hi everyone, for this roleplay, I had the opportunity to serve as Noel, the French diplomatic advisor. It was a truly enlightening and intellectually rewarding experience. So my role placed me right at the center of intercultural negotiation, where I had to balance competing interests while promoting France and the Europe values of fairness, cooperation and sustainability. So, as a France representative, I needed to be culturally sensitive and diplomatic. So, one of the biggest challenges was navigating between the United States assertive and rule-based approach and China more reserved and sovereignty-focused stance. This required me to moderate my tone, stay inclusive, and propose practical compromise like the WTO metric dashboard and the Global Intellectual Property Enforcement Panel, or GIEP, to help build trust and maintain neutrality. So through the experience, I gained a deeper understanding of how culture, national interests, and communication style intersect in international dialogue. More importantly, I learned that diplomacy is not about it's not just about reaching agreements. It's about managing differences with empathy, encouraging collaboration, and building long-term relationship between nations. So overall, this role strengthened my confidence in negotiation, enhanced my intercultural awareness, and reminded me that diplomacy, when practiced with respect and understanding, can lead to a real lasting solution for global challenges.
Being Madame Anais, the French delegate and chairperson in the role play, has made me feel like it was a very meaningful experience. It helped me understand how complex and important global diplomacy can be. I had to work with delegates from three powerful countries, each with different goals, cultures, and ways of speaking. One of the hardest part was staying neutral as the chair while still making sure France and the European Union's interests were shared clearly. I learned that being a good mediator means being fair, patient, and respectful of cultural differences. For example, I had to balance the United States' direct style with China's focus on respect, while also showing France's support for working together as a team. As the chair, I also saw how important it is to listen carefully and give everyone a chance to speak. This helps us solve problems and find agreements. So I learned that it is not just about finding solution. It is also about protecting a country's interests to be fair and respectful to everyone. I also realized that things like history, culture, and trust can really affect how well countries work together. And this role has given me a better understanding of how global decisions are made and showed me how powerful diplomacy can be for creating peace and cooperation.
Playing L, the lead negotiator for the United States, really gave me a new perspective on how international negotiation work. It's not just about stating your country interests. It's also about finding a balance between firmness and also cooperation. So L character is confident, strategic, and very result driven, which made me realize how much pressure a negotiator carries in defending national priorities while still moving toward global consensus. One thing I learned is that negotiation isn't about winning. It's about building frameworks that work for everyone. Every word Ellie said had to be backed by evidence, clarity, and intention. And sometimes being direct doesn't mean being aggressive. It means that being clear enough to avoid misunderstanding. So stepping into her role made me more aware of how much preparation, diplomacy, and patience goes into real world diplomacy making. It taught me that leadership in global forum require not just knowledge but also emotional control, strategic thinking, and the ability to listen even when you disagree.
So portraying Zhao Mei, the Chinese delegate in the WTO trade negotiation roleplay, gave me a very meaningful insight into how diplomacy is shaped by both national interests and also cultural values. So playing this role, I had to consistently advocate for China's emphasizing on sovereignty, long-term planning, and also a mutual respect, especially when responding to the executive rules-based proposal from the US. I learned that communicate with a legal precision and restraint, reflecting China's high power distance, collectivist culture, and also preference for harmony. Proposals like gradual tariff reductions and opposition to foreign-led audits forced me to think strategically while maintaining cultural sensitivity and face-saving diplomacy. Also through Xiaomi's voice, I understood how China navigates global governance with caution, patience, and a focus on sustainable cooperation. This experience helped me appreciate that international negotiation not only about policy but also about building trust, managing historical sensitivities, and ensuring fair process for all.
Hello and good day, everyone. In this roleplay as Priya, the United States in negotiation, I gained valuable insight into intercultural diplomacy and international trade negotiation. Priya's character embodying the pragmatic and assertive nature of the US, focus on transparency, fairness, and enforceable trade commitment. However, it was clear that this principle had to be balanced with a diplomatic understanding of the different perspectives presented by the other delegates. And here are the key takeaways. And the first one, the role of FIA allowed me to experience firsthand how crucial cultural differences in communication are in international negotiation. The US, as a low context culture, tends to be direct and goal oriented in its communication. However, when interacting with delegates from China, I encountered the challenge of working with a culture that values indirect and nuanced speech. This difference taught me the importance of adapting communication strategy to ensure productive dialogue and maintain a respectful tone during negotiation. The second one, while advocating for the US interests, such as tariff reduction and a WTO monitor IP audit, I quickly realized that negotiation is not solely about defending one's own national interests. Instead, it is about strategic compromise, being flexible enough to adjust one position and creatively accommodate the concern of other nations. This became especially evident during discussion on intellectual property and rare earth materials, where innovative solutions were necessary to move beyond rigid position and find common ground. And for the last one, this experience reinforced the need for cultural sensitivity and passion. Diplomacy is not just about articulating national goals, it's about listening attentively and working together constructively. It is crucial to approach negotiation with a deep understanding of other party cultural contexts. And this role play emphasizes how such understanding can foster more effective collaborative diplomacy that leads to shared objective. Thank you.